Thank you for hosting me this afternoon to talk about the reopening of schools based on the experience in South Africa. We have the Rosdek Group. It's a chain of schools in South Africa, and I will be willing to share experience as you requested on how did we go about it, looking into how Uganda is going to open up the school system come the 10th of January. The schools were opened lockdown level 5. That was a total lockdown in March of 2020. So in August, July, after the winter time, after the peak of the first wave, schools were allowed to reopen in a staggered framework of 30%, 50%, and until we had a total reopening of the school system. What happened was there were specific things that the ministry required of us to do. For instance, the standard procedures of hygiene. Schools were required to have masks for all learners. Facilities had to be facilities had to be cleaned, and to make sure that the learners are in an ideal learning environment. We were required to ensure the social distancing of learners. For instance, if a stream had, let's say, 40 learners, we were required to have like 20 learners of a 1 meter distance, which required a lot of space in terms of the school system. And you find that we had to adjust, for example, the learning timetables from, let's say, if the classes were running from 8 to 1, we had to extend them until 4 o'clock because schools were required to have a lot of space. So in this regard, I think the school principals and management will need to do a lot of preparation towards this because the numbers cannot be congested. However, they should expect that there will be a few cases of COVID incidents, and the schools should be prepared to have isolation rooms available. They make sure that there are sanitizers in every classroom before they begin. They must make sure they put certain conditions of learners ensuring discipline of putting on masks at all times and when in school. However, like sport, it was a bit difficult in terms of sport. How are we going to run a sport? That was a question. Co-curricular activities like sport have to take place, and that will involve a lot of contact between learners. So you find that routine monitoring of learners at school for incidents is very important. So you need temperature measurement machines, you need to do regular checkups of learners who develop a fever or symptoms like, so that they're isolated, and those in contact with are told either to keep in the dormitories or sometimes they'll be going home. So it's not going to be a free COVID environment entirely. So it should be expected at the back of the mind that there will be certain incidents because either learners, when they're coming back from their homes, they have had contacts of people with COVID, though they test before you get to school. So it will be mandatory that it's advisable that most of the learners can do COVID testing before they go back to the schools. But it might be a bit costly looking at the circumstances. Parents have to raise money for school fees. Obviously, it will be, again, a challenge to the school administration that some of the parents might not have the money because of the economic hardships we've been through for the last 24 months or 2 years. So there'll be quite a lot of things to adhere to. But the main important one is the hygiene in the school environment. The parents struggling to raise money because they've been affected by COVID financially. To the school system, they should be able to accommodate these parents to make payments, for instance, in a phased approach, if, or what we call negotiated payment system. If, for instance, a term takes 3 months, you can say, can you make a payment either to complete the fees within 2 installments or 3 installments. In that way, you are accommodating the parents to avail their learners back in the schooling system. So that's what I would advise, and that's what I did in some of the institutions that I ran. On the question of the worry that when numbers go up, then it preempts another lockdown. The fact of the matter is, the scientists will come to a conclusion telling you that the numbers are high, contagious. They will increase the number of contagious, of contamination with each other, and then it becomes viral and increases in the numbers. I don't think that is a good idea. The issue is when cases come up in school system, if there is proper monitoring by the school nurses and the health inspectors who come to the schools regularly, pick up the learners with symptoms, they should be able to control them by either isolating them, and it's mandatory for the school to have an isolation room for all those learners whom they suspect to have been in contact with such a student, or a student who has indeed been affected by COVID, to make sure that he goes for a health center. The beauty is that the variant that we have, the Omicron, is not that bad as the Delta. So we can live with it. You find that especially young students who are at school, they have high immunity. I don't think it should preempt the closure of school business, because economies are open. When you look, you compare with, let's say, the United Kingdom, had over 100,000, but look at the cases of hospitalization, were very few. France, in the last 1 week, I think they recorded, a single day, they recorded the highest of 208,000, but with about how many people were hospitalized. So in that case, I think that Omicron is manageable, and we cannot have a lockdown at the detriment of destroying the economies. So we must learn how to live with the virus, and I'm very positive that we're not going to have other lockdowns, except if the variant comes as very vicious as Delta was. But the Omicron, yes, it spreads fast, but it's not that bad. And I believe that's why, for example, in South Africa, the economy is open. Events are open. A teenage pregnancy, this has been across the whole of Africa, and I believe the rest of the world, because the cases of teenage pregnancy have been high because the girls have been home. Either you find that they've been even pregnated by family members. So in the South African system, they allow kids to go to school even when they are pregnant. We need to accommodate our children as long as they are able to go back to school. The school system must create a support system as well as government. They shouldn't be denied access to education. For instance, if a lady is working and goes for maternity a month to delivery, the same could happen with the school girls. So because they've already lost so much time, 2 years of their life, without school system. So I would encourage that the schools must accommodate them and continue with the schooling system. The virus is real and it happens, and people must accept that what I would encourage them is to get vaccinated. And for those who are vaccinated area, they have to get booster vaccinations, because the way it affects a vaccinated person is different from a non-vaccinated individual. There's a lot of conspiracy theories that are going around. They first said people will die in the first 12 months, in the 24 months, but we've had vaccinations across the world for a long time. So my simple advice is the virus is real, people get vaccinated, and that's the only way we're going to beat the virus.